Hi, or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, then my name is Erica, and today we are sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background. He's really obnoxious, but anyway, today we are going to be talking about Creepshow Art's comeback. And the reason why I say comeback with air quotes is because Shannon, who goes by Creepshow Art on YouTube, she says she's not coming back to YouTube, and yet she made a video that was over 2 hours long slandering Emily Artful and saying that it was her defense and that she was kind of countering the claims that Emily Artful made. But anybody who watched the video, I'm sorry that you wasted over 2 hours of your time. I had to waste that time as well to prepare for this video, and so yeah. One of the things that really bothered me about Creepshow Art's video was that she constantly was talking badly about Emily Artful and bringing up her drug addiction to the point where she had an entire section of her video labeled heroin. I hope I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. She had an entire section of her video just about Emily's past drug use and saying that she lied about being sober at one point. And it's like, first of all, how the hell would you know? How would you know whether somebody was using drugs or not if you don't actually know them? Like Shannon claimed in her video, well, I never really knew Emily. So how the hell would you know all of this about her? And it doesn't matter if Emily used drugs or not. You should not use that against somebody and be using that to be like, see, she's not as good of a person as you think she is. Like, that has nothing to do with whether she's a good person or not. And whether she's a good person or not has nothing to do with whether the claims against Shannon are true or not. And as many commenters pointed out, Shannon in the video was trying to prove that she didn't stalk Emily Artful, but she just happened to have all of these receipts from like when Emily was in middle school and high school. Like, if you're not stalking somebody, how do you have all of this information stashed away about them? I don't have a file on anybody in my computer or my phone. I'm not collecting evidence. I'm not planning on blackmailing people. The only conceivable reason I could think of, besides her saying she's bringing a court case against Emily, which I don't buy, but the only reason she would have compiled this evidence was if she was planning on slandering Emily or blackmailing Emily. And also, it's like, why would something Emily did or said in middle school be relevant to the type of person Emily is now? And I believe now Emily is in her 30s. So it's like, if I was a shitty person in middle school, I don't think that has any bearing on the person I am now. Like, yeah, I did some shitty things in middle school, because middle schoolers tend to really bow down to peer pressure, and also where people in middle school tend to be worried a lot about their image and looking cool. So middle schoolers aren't always the nicest people. I don't think that's a shock to most adults, but apparently to, I hope my dog is not peeing right now, apparently to Shannon from Creepshow Art, who you are in middle school is indicative of who you are today. That's ridiculous. It makes me so angry that she would do that, and that she would ramble on for 2 hours, just basically bringing up like screenshots from, I guess, Emily Artful used to have a blog on DeviantArt, which is like a blogging site, which it's kind of like people would basically emotionally dump on there, but it was popular in the early 2000s, and it was as Low from Beauty Demon said, like the landscape of the internet was a lot different back then, so socially acceptable to just basically word vomit onto a blog and probably share things you shouldn't share. But that doesn't make Emily a bad person. And I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. In trying to show that there was no conceivable way she could have stalked Emily, she proved that she 99% stalked Emily. And the reason why I don't say 100% is because I don't want to get sued. But I think to most reasonable people who watched that video, you stalked her. Like, that's what stalking is. It's tracking everything somebody does and like sharing somebody's life story, even though you claim you don't even know this person, and yet you would know Emily's life story better than Emily would know herself. Well, what is my dog doing? That is ridiculous. Like, you don't know Emily better than she knows herself. Especially if you hear him claiming you barely know her. And another point I really wanted to make was about the ABUSE allegations that Emily made. And Shannon was like, well, here she said she was friends with his ex and that they had no hard feelings. Or here she said like she only had 2 toxic relationships in her life. Sometimes it can take people years to realize that a relationship was unhealthy, or ABUSIVE. It can take years for people to realize that. Part of it can be because they don't think they deserve better than that, like they have low self-esteem, or part of it could be like you don't always see something when you're in it. And even when you're like just out of a relationship, sometimes you could still be in denial about it and not want to think of it as like that was really, like that person treated me terribly and that was not okay. Like, not everybody is ready to admit that. So, and by you being like, well, now she's saying it was toxic, like how convenient. Like, no, because maybe she just realized now, like, I didn't deserve that. And I think Shannon, by doing this, Shannon is invalidating anybody who's ever been in that situation and then years later comes to terms with it. The fact that it wasn't good and that they didn't deserve that. Like, Shannon isn't just invalidating Emily Artful. She's invalidating anybody who's ever been in that situation. And my next point that I wanted to touch on is that another thing Shannon said, which is still related to the ABUSIVE claims, is that she's like, well, isn't it convenient that Emily Artful says like 10 people in her life have been ABUSIVE? Well, Shannon, I don't know if you know this, but many victims of ABUSE, it's very hard for me to spell that word out loud for some reason, but YouTube makes me do it. But many victims of that will think it's normal, so they'll keep going to people that treat them like that because they think that's how relationships just are, or they think that's all they deserve. So a lot of people who are victims of that will end up being victims of that again. It's like a cycle. And even so, like, that doesn't mean Emily is like the girl who cried wolf. Maybe she's been in a bunch of relationships that were ABUSIVE. Like, and I'm not gonna dismiss her claims and be like, oh, well, it's convenient that she's claiming all these people have done this to her, because who am I to say that? And who is Shannon to say that? You know, you don't really get to invalidate people in that way. And I just think it's gross that Shannon spent 2 hours basically invalidating Emily and shaming her for everything she's done in the past, as if anybody has a spotless past. Like, nobody does, and Emily's not claiming that she doesn't. So holding something people have done like 15 years ago is ridiculous. And one of the last things I want to say is that I don't think that it's a coincidence that that Creepshow's video was going around in circles and constantly like repeating the same things, and it was 2 hours long, and the timeline was very confusing and it didn't make sense. I think that was a very calculated move. I think Shannon wanted to confuse people so that people wouldn't really understand what was going on, so that maybe they would have just taken Shannon's word for it, because she put a bunch of receipts on the screen, and so it looked like she had all this information and she was proving her point when really she didn't prove anything. And I think anybody who actually watched the video probably knows that she didn't prove anything. And if anything, in my opinion, she just proved that she did stalk and harass Emily Artful for years. And again, this is my opinion. This is alleged. I'm not saying it's true. It's just what I believe. So please do not sue me. And with that, that is the end of this video. If you learned something, if you agreed with this, or I guess if you enjoyed it, I don't know if that's the right term, but please give it a big thumbs up. And if you have not already and you would like to see more of my content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye.